Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Dario Health. Manage your blood glucose levels, increase your possibilities. By YpsoPump, the first premixed auto-injector for very low blood sugar. And by Dexcom. Take control of your diabetes and live life to the fullest with Dexcom.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Simms.
This week, my first interview with Ypsomed, the Swiss company teaming up with Lilly Diabetes to bring a new pump to the U.S. A few features make YpsoPump unique, including their infusion sets, which can help you cut back on insulin waste.
Yes, I know, it's terrible. You throw away so much insulin all the time, but you can disconnect, of course, from your body. You change the cartridge, you put it back on, and that's how you don't lose your insulin in the tube.
That's Ypsomed's CEO, Simon Michel. We talk about more features, and he answers questions about the partnership with Lilly in innovations. What is an inverse diabetes vaccine? And could you be part of a trial for one? This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. Welcome to our first full episode of 2021. Happy New Year. I am so glad to have you here. Here we go. Another year of the podcast. My goodness. I am your host, Stacey Simms. And as always, my goal here remains the same. We aim to educate and inspire about diabetes with a focus on people who use insulin. And yeah, that line sounds a little bit different if you're used to my intro where I talk exclusively about type 1. But, more and more people with other types of diabetes are listening as the show is growing. And I think that's really important to acknowledge and to kind of dial back and see who we're serving here. My son was diagnosed with type 1 14 years ago. My husband lives with type 2 diabetes. I do not have any type of diabetes. I'm the broadcaster in the family. Now, this year on the show, I'm going to be focusing a lot on new technology. I think the delays that we saw in 2020 because of COVID are going to result in a lot more news than was originally planned or expected for 2021. A lot of that innovation, a lot of those FDA submissions and approvals are getting stacked up, especially as we're looking at the second half of 2021 and into 2022. So, why not get ready? And you all have told me that you are very interested in episodes about technology. In this episode, we're going to learn all about Ypsomed and their plans for the U.S. market. I have an interview scheduled with their U.S. partners, Lilly Diabetes, to talk more in depth about the proprietary nature of this pump. You can only use Lilly insulin in it in the United States. That's interesting. We talk about that here in the interview. And then there are a bunch of questions that Ypsomed really cannot answer that are more for Lilly. So I'm excited. I'll be talking to them soon. And just in the technology front, you're going to hear from the folks from Tandem. I've got a Medtronic interview I'm excited to share with you. And as we look forward, of course, I will still be doing the personal stories interviews because I love those too. But please let me know if there are companies that you would like to hear from this year, and we will get them on. And yes, Bigfoot, Beta Bionics. I'll be talking to everybody. Okay, Ypsomed in just a moment. But first, Diabetes Connections has a new sponsor this year. Yes, I am so happy to welcome our newest partner, Dario. Cannot wait to tell you all about them. We first noticed Dario a couple of years ago at a conference, and many thought being able to turn your smartphone into a meter was pretty amazing. And I'm excited to tell you that Dario offers even more now. The Dario Diabetes Success Plan gives you all the supplies and support you need to succeed. You get a glucometer that fits in your pocket, unlimited test strips and lancets delivered to your door, and a mobile app with a complete view of your data. The plan is tailored for you, with coaching when and how you need it, and personalized reports based on your activity. Find out more. Go to mydario.com/diabetes-connections. My guest this week is the CEO of Ypsomed. And Ypsomed is a leading maker and developer of injection and infusion systems, pumps and pens, around the world, and not just for diabetes, as you'll hear. They've been in the space for a very long time, but we're talking to them because I know I have listeners around the world, and I appreciate you all so much. And many of you may have experience with this pump, but we are U.S.-centric. And Ypsomed announced that it is partnering with Lilly Diabetes to bring their pump to the U.S. market. That announcement raised some eyebrows when it came out this fall because It will be the first pump in the U.S. that will only be used with one type of insulin, that can only be used with one type of insulin. And the U.S. market is the only place where that will happen. This pump will be available in other countries, it already is, with different types of insulin. In other words, to be clear, you'll only be able to use Lilly insulin such as Humalog in the U.S. Ypsomed pump. Now, Ypsomed has been around for a long time before this, of course. Many of you who've been in the space for a long time will recognize some of the technology names and the brands that come up here. I was really excited to talk to the CEO of Ypsomed, Simon Michel, for the very first time. He's been the CEO since 2014, at the company since 2006. And as you'll hear, he kind of grew up in the company. And here's our conversation. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. I'm excited to have you on the show and learn more about this. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Stacey, and to give us the chance to talk and explain to what we're doing.
Yeah, so let's just start with the basics, if you could. Tell me about Ypsomed, because we're really not that familiar with it here in the U.S., so if you wouldn't mind taking me through, let's start with the company history before we talk about the product, because you are not a new company. You've been around for a while.
Yes, I'd love to. Absolutely. Thank you. So my father in 1985, around the time when Elman from Minimed found the first pump in Europe. It was the name Disatronic. Some of you might still remember the name. And we were quite a successful pump company, and we sold the pump company, the Disatronic company, to Roche in 2003. Roche is still a name in Europe, roughly 80,000 patients on the product. But as they didn't really innovate anymore, we decided to go back into pumping in 2010.
When you went back into the pump business, what was the product at the time?
So we did two things. In 2010, we signed with Insulet. We took over the distribution of the Omnipod in Europe. So we basically built up the business for Insulet between 2010 and 2017 when we've given it back to them. And in parallel, we have started to develop our own YpsoPump. So we went back into tube pumping and thought, what can we do better? What can we do better in terms of pumps? What is the community needing tomorrow versus the old H-tron, D-tron, Disatronic pumps? What can we do better?
What did you find that you could do better? We're going to talk about what the pump looks like and what it does, but big picture.
So when we look at Ypsomed today from a whole, we make roughly 400 million revenue. We grow at roughly 15% per year. So quite a healthy company. Despite of COVID, we still grow. And we have two businesses, and it's quite important to understand. We do both pumps and pens. Today, I'd say we are by far largest pen and auto-injector manufacturers in the world. We close roughly 7 out of 10 deals in the pen space. That's pens for insulins, the SolarStar pen, some of you might know. It's also many of the Chinese pens all over the world, but auto-injectors for autoimmune diseases, migraine, asthma, psoriasis, osteoporosis. So this is our device business. And the other half of our company, the other 200 million, is where we invest in pen needles, in blood glucose monitoring, and in pump systems. And this we sell in Europe very successfully now for the past years in Europe under our own brand with own subsidiaries and own people.
I'd like to know more about, maybe we'll talk more about the pens a little bit later on, but when you started talking about the pumps and the systems that you started making in the 2000s, I'd love to get back to what was lacking in the pump market. What did you think needed to change that you could do differently and better?
So there are a couple of things, the pump was very much medical device centric. It's a very strong technic focus. It is designed by engineers, great engineers from America, from Switzerland, from Germany, great people that think about what features we can add. But in the end of the day, we use these devices daily. We don't really want to know and hear and feel and about this device. So number one criteria for us was to make it small and light. YpsoPump is roughly 80 grams. I don't know what this is in American weight measures, but it's a roughly half the weight of a Medtronic pump. That gives you some kind of feeling. Very importantly, you wear it all day. The other thing is simplicity. We don't need all those features. If you look at the iPhone, some of these phones, they have many features, but they only show the features that you actually use. So really thought in a way, what is really required? You don't need 8 basal menus. You need 2 or 3. Some might use, but the big majority of us, we don't need these vast opportunities.
When I look at the pump that we're talking about today, it does look tiny. It does look light. And I had to convert as well using my iPhone. And that weight, that 80-gram weight is 0.176 pounds. So very, very, very light. It looks like it's smaller. It looks like, obviously, it's lighter. And does it have a touch screen? It doesn't look like it has buttons.
Yes, absolutely. So it has a touch screen. It's used like your mobile phone. You have one button to turn it on and off. That's basically it. But other than that, you have a regular touch screen, which works at night perfectly. It's basically white on black, so it's a very good contrast that you see.
Is the pump controlled by a phone? Is it controlled remotely, or is it still used as the touchscreen?
So yes, very important. We are compared to other manufacturers, we are a iPhone, a app-centric company. So everything you do from your phone. So you have your Dexcom data on your phone. You give your bolus from your phone. You do your basal rates from your phone. That's our strategy. We have the firmware updates that go via phone onto the pump and back. It's very much app-centric. The reason is we can be much, much faster in adding elements, in adding new functions, new features. You don't need to exchange the device. You don't want to exchange the device every year. Simply too costly. This is why we set it up that way.
So that's a huge deal, because here in the States, we're all waiting for, bolus by phone. We're waiting for pump control, which Tandem and maybe Omnipod will have in hopefully 2021. But just to be clear, you have that already.
So we have the apps, and the whole app control features are now launched in Q1 in all over Europe, yes. All the other things, the integration, the data, this is in place, the apps is in the market, but the integration of this bolus button and the CGM together with Dexcom is launched now in the beginning of 21, Q1.
Well, let's talk, I brought up the United States market. Let's talk about this partnership with Lilly. What is that partnership going to look like? And we can talk about consumers in a moment, but what will that partnership look like for you all? Tell me about the system. What will the Lilly Ypsomed Dexcom system look like when you bring it to the States?
Well, basically from a relationship, it's simple. Ypsomed innovates and we manufacture. Lilly supports in innovation and does the marketing and sales. It was for us crystal clear from the beginning, Ypsomed as a European company, it would be very tough for us to enter the big US market. So we were looking for a partner, and luckily Lilly was looking for a pump. So we found each other a year ago. Ypsomed is the company that actually registered the product through the FDA. We expect an approval in the second half of 22. But it's a fully Lilly branded ACE pump. So Dexcom is integrated, has the bolus calculator, the remote bolus function, has a Type 0 controller that will follow by mid-23. And it is a Lilly product from a user perspective, but it's manufactured in Switzerland.
It's so interesting to hear you say these things that a few years ago would have been very foreign to us. I think my audience is familiar now. The ACE designation, Type 0, which is the software that's inside. It's incredible just to take a moment and think how far things have come.
Yes, it goes fast, pretty fast, yes.
Goodness. But to be clear, Type 0 is I would call that a hybrid closed loop software. So that's the software that will, in very plain terms, work with the Dexcom to increase insulin or decrease insulin to try to keep people more in range. I just want to be crystal clear about that.
No, Stacey, absolutely. I mean, Type 0 belongs to Dexcom, and of course, Type 0 is further working on new versions of the controller. It's a constant enhancement. At the moment, the features that you described are the ones. It's the low suspend function. It's the hybrid adaptation of the basal rate. There's the microbolus element. There are a couple of features which have one goal to bring patients with type 1 diabetes in time in range.
The ACE designation, and I get a little confused on this, so I apologize in advance. That's all about interoperability, right? That's about making these new technologies compatible with other devices. Right back to our conversation. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Gvoke HypoPen. And almost everyone who takes insulin has experienced a low blood sugar. That can be scary. A very low blood sugar is really scary. And that's where Gvoke HypoPen comes in. Gvoke is the first auto-injector to treat very low blood sugar. Gvoke HypoPen is pre-mixed and ready to go with no visible needle. That means it's easy to use. How easy is it? You pull off the red cap, push the yellow end onto bare skin, and hold it for 5 seconds. That's it. Find out more. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Gvoke logo. Gvoke shouldn't be used in patients with pheochromocytoma or insulinoma. Visit gvokeglucagon.com/risk. Now back to Simon talking about interoperability and the ACE controller.
Well, I mean, the great thing is that it's much easier to add different devices or different controllers to it. Once you have the ACE designation, you can actually change or upgrade a controller. As you know, Lilly is doing a lot of research on own controllers. So it's thinkable that they might use their own controller in the future together with their new insulins. You can think about situations where you can do better therapy, better time in range when you combine new insulins with new controllers and actually use the insulin data to make better controllers. And also on the sensor side, it's possible that other sensors would come to the system. At the moment, we love our partnership with Dexcom. It's great. It really works perfect. But it just shows openness, that it's basically easier to add something else.
I have another question you may not be able to answer. I will be talking to Lilly about this, and it's really a question about them. I was at Lilly's headquarters in Cambridge, the headquarters for this project, a couple of years ago, where they showed us their pump prototype, because at the time they were working on building their own hardware. And obviously that project, I don't know if it's put aside. I'll ask them about that. But this is not that pump, correct? This is not the pump that Lilly developed. Their partnership with you is using your hardware, Ypsomed's pump, not this Lilly. It was a little circle disc pump that they showed us at the time.
Yes, YpsoPump is purely manufactured by Ypsomed. It is the product designed here in Switzerland that will be the pump that Lilly will use. You're absolutely right. Lilly was working on our own pump program, a patch pump type program for many, many years. But you have to ask them. They recently, so to our knowledge, they recently stopped the project and are now fully focusing on our joint partnership to bring a Ypsomed Lilly pump to U.S. patients.
I appreciate you answering that. I know that's more of a question for Lilly, and we'll talk to them about that for sure. Mm-hmm. But, insulin affordability is a huge issue in the United States, and we are struggling with that in a lot of our healthcare system right now. But making a pump that only uses one type of insulin is going to limit options. And I got to be honest with you, I think it may not be seen as a very popular feature. We have insurance issues in the United States. I just went through this with my son, where we'd been on one insulin for many years, and then my insurance company said, no, you have to use this other insulin. And that can happen here. Are you concerned about that at all?
This will happen, of course, but it is ultimately beneficial for a healthcare system. I can make the comparison with mobile phones. If you have a mobile subscription and you have your fixed line subscription and you have an internet subscription, you get a better deal. Now, Lilly's approach is to really bundle all these elements, and it will ultimately be much better, beneficial for people with diabetes. It will be better for the healthcare system as a lower cost. So it's definitely not increasing the cost. Yes, it is increasing. It's increasing to some extent. Your choice of insulin, whether it's a short-acting insulin from Novo or from Lilly, fully agree. But it will lower costs for healthcare system because of the bundle approach. It's a really innovative partnership where you see an insulin manufacturer really decides to go the full way, the first time in history. And this will be beneficial for U.S. healthcare system for sure.
That's really interesting. So they'll have to work with insurance companies to say, if you cover this pump, you must cover this insulin. Again, I have to talk to Lilly, but I would imagine.
Yes, well, of course, that's a fair question. But Lilly wouldn't invest so much in a partnership if they wouldn't want to sell their core asset, which is their insulin. And in a pre-filled cartridge, it will work with our pump. So this is the way this relationship is built up. But again, for Americans and for the healthcare system, I personally only see benefits in the end of the day in terms of cost.
That pre-filled cartridge is something that is not currently available on any pump system in the U.S. It was here for a while with some older pumps that are not on the market anymore.
Well, it was our pump, yes. It was the Disatronic D-Tron pump with the 3 ml Humalog cartridge was available in America between, I would say, 1998 and 2004-ish, before Roche stopped it. It will come back, but it will come back in a 1.6 format, in a shorter version. We basically have this in the market already in Europe, together with Novo Nordisk. So there's a Novo cart, pump cart, that works with our pump, that's available in the market now since 2017. And Lilly's going the same way now. This is a huge benefit to work with pre-fill. You don't have to fiddle around and fill your cartridges. You can just take it out of the fridge, make it a bit warm, put it in the pump, and that's it. Yeah. Huge benefit.
It was very popular. I want to say the Asante Snap pump also had it for a while, and that's the one that I look at because
yeah, you're right. You're right. It wasn't. This one was not a market, so it was not so successful. This pump, you're right. The issue was with the D-Tron pump. It was simply too big. It's 3 ml cartridge. Now the 1.6 is shorter. That's how we can build such a small pump. And the good thing about YpsoPump is with our infusion set, you can actually keep the tube on. So you can change the cartridge, you can keep the tube on. You don't have to throw away the insulin which is in your tube, because you can change a cartridge, keep the tube using, and you don't lose insulin.
Okay, I have many questions. Wait, let's go through those all at once. And I will get to the keeping the inset on. But staying with the cartridge for a moment. So that's 160 units in the cartridge. And you said take it out of the fridge, pop it in the pump. Is it good in the refrigerator for a long time? Because right now, if people kind of pre-fill when they're not supposed to, the cartridges that are available on the market will start to break down. I'm assuming that's not the case.
Well, it's as we are used with pens. I think there's an expiry date of 2 to 3 years. It depends on market by market, but you can keep it as your pen.
I was thinking 2 to 3 weeks for a filled cartridge right now. We're not supposed to do that with the Tandem or the Medtronic pumps.
No. But it's a pre-filled, closed system, as we are used with a pre-filled 3 ml cartridge. Some of you may use a reusable durable pen. Of course, there you need regularly in Europe. Quite a lot of people use durable pens. And now with Medtronic coming with Companion, you will see more and more durable pens in America as well. This smart pen trend will definitely lead to more cartridge-based pens where you exchange the cartridge. So it's a standard closed cartridge system. You can keep it for 2 or 3 years in the fridge.
So talk to me about keeping the inset on when you're changing out the cartridge. You're not priming the tubing. You're not doing things like that?
Yes, we built in a valve in a way that you can take the connector off the pump, you exchange the cartridge, you put the connector back on the pump, and there's no air coming into the tube, so you can continue the pump. Of course, you would disconnect it. The Orbit set has a nice feature. You disconnect at the head. It has a 360-degree rotation feature, so it never crinks. But you can disconnect, of course, from your body. You change the cartridge, you put it back on, and that's how you don't lose your insulin in the tube.
That's wonderful. People are, it's very difficult when you're losing units upon units when you're priming.
Yes, I know. It's terrible. You throw away so much insulin all the time. So you can use this tube for 7 days. So 2 or 3 cartridges, of course, it depends. If you need more insulin, you use it for 2 or 3 cartridges. If you use less insulin, use it for so it's just I think 7 days is what will make sense.
Tell me a little bit more about that inset, because I've said for years and years that insets are the weak link of pumping. They leak, they don't work so well. You mentioned it rotates. Talk to me about your inset.
Yes, I fully agree. It's definitely the space where pump manufacturers have to spend much more effort in innovation. Our infusion set is today a 3-day infusion set. We work on a 5 and 7 day version to just keep it longer on. It's also regulatory work that has to be done here. It has a skin-colored plaster, so it doesn't show so much if you wear it when you're at the beach. It has a 360-degree rotation at the head, so it really doesn't crink. That's quite nice. It pops up, clicks very nicely. You can click it behind your back without looking at it. You hear it, and it's safe and close. It has a Bluetooth tube, so it doesn't show so much on black clothing. A couple of nice features.
Is the skin tone one skin tone?
It is I would say it's as neutral as possible one skin tone. Yes, I mean, it's better than white. I think white is really shiny, like we are used from other pump manufacturers. It's just a more neutral skin tone.
Yeah, I know. But you know what I'm asking, though. I mean, I guess what I should have said is it Caucasian? Is it more peach than brown?
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, your first feedback is you have to work on that, especially for the U.S. market and other markets. So I'll give you that piece of feedback.
Good input. Thank you. No, you're absolutely right. It's a very good remark. I guess we are not so much used from a diversity perspective over here in Western Europe. I think it's a very, very important remark you're making. And I definitely think it's possible to do that. I think it's a great idea.
That would be wonderful because, I chuckled as I said it, but I appreciate you taking it seriously. It's difficult to talk about these things, and I find myself sometimes, I shouldn't have laughed there, trying to diffuse the situation a little bit, but we are a very large and diverse country over here, and we have lots of... I fully agree, and diabetes doesn't stop at skin color. I think it's a great idea, and I don't see a reason why we shouldn't innovate on that. It's just something we have never seen over here. It's not a topic that we got from customer feedback over here in Europe, but it's a great input. Thank you. Well, I appreciate you taking it that way. So let's talk about the pens for a moment, because we tend to focus on this show a lot about pumps, but at the same time, you have already mentioned so many interesting things about pens. Do you plan to you mentioned smart pens, you've talked about the different types of pens that Ypsomed makes already outside of diabetes. Is any of that available in the U.S. market, or do you plan to bring it here?
So from the insulin pens today, only the SoloStar pen from Sanofi is on the market. It's a disposable pen. Also the Tucheo pen, so for the other type of the Sanofi insulin. Other than that, we are at the moment in discussion with several parties for our smart pen. We have a smart pen for a 1.6 ml version and a 3 ml version, which connects to the app and the cloud. Of course, you have all the benefits of a smart pen. You can use the CGM data, including all the injection data, which we really need. I mean, you need both sides. You need the BGM, CGM data, as well as the injection data. When you have injected, have you correctly injected? We have a lot of nice features on the pen. Tells you if it's dialed correctly or not. There's a light. It shows your holding time, how long you have to hold on. Many nice features you can do with smart pens today.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't still want pumps attached to them. And a pen is a really
nice absolutely. Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, worldwide, we have 50 million people that take shots every day, but only 1.5 million use a pump. So I think the vast majority uses pens. So it definitely have to innovate more in that space. And I'm so happy now that Medtronic decided to make that step, to make that move. And also Novo Nordisk making the move. Now Lilly will come with a solution. The space is now moving, and that's very important.
It's okay if you can't answer this, but can you give us an idea of what an Ypsomed smart insulin pen would do? I mean, the only frame of reference we have here in the States right now is Companion Medical, as you mentioned, with Medtronic. Could you give us an idea of what features might be available?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this pen is available in the analog version, so the non-digital version in China for over 10 years. It's a very robust pen. The piston rod pushes back with your finger. It has a bayonet coupling for the cartridge. It has a spring-driven support for injection, so you don't need the force if you if you are old or don't have strength anymore. You just push the button and it injects with a spring support. It's a very nice feature. You have a large display which works at night. You have a light that gives a signal whether your dial is correct or wrongly. It's red and green. It shows how long you have to inject. That it stops blinking when it's injected fully. You have to have this holding time, I think, because the holding time is very important. It's a Bluetooth connection, of course, to the app. Connects automatically. It stores everything on the pen and on the app. So all the features that you are used from Companion are now in there. I think it will be a great product that we are working on here, and hopefully be able to introduce to America. But it will take 2.5 years to come. We have to go through the registration program together and still need to make the decision what partner will be the one that will bring it to the market.
You know, I should have asked you right at the beginning, but I'm curious, do you have any kind of personal connection to diabetes?
Well, not personally. Nobody in our family has type 1 diabetes. We have a couple of uncles and aunts that are on insulin on type 2. But, I spent my whole life with diabetes. I think when I was 10 years old, I was drawing the first insulin pump. I still have this picture somewhere. I can send it to you.
That. Yes.
It was an H-Tron pump. I remember 1987.
Wow.
So it was my whole life. I mean, we went to the pump factory with my father when I was a boy. My brother and me, we ran around, and so it was my whole life. And then I went to university, and I started in telecom industry, and it was very clear for me that I would come back. So I'm in this industry now really for almost 2 decades, but we don't have diabetes, but I'm very, very connected to it.
That's great. I would love to see that photo or anything that you might want to share from the late 80s.
Sure.
So I guess that leads me to this question, which is, what gets you excited? I mean, your family has been in this business for so long. You've seen it change. You're bringing something brand new to the United States in a couple of years. But what gets you out of bed every morning that you're still excited to work in this space?
I believe we are extremely privileged here to be able to work on products and services that make life easier for people with diabetes. This is our business for 30 years. It's a family business. We are stock listed, but the majority of the shares are in our family, so we do have a large responsibility on it. It's just great to see. We are 2,000 people now here working every day, try to make better devices, better solutions for people with chronic diseases, also outside of diabetes. And it's a huge privilege and motivation to work on it.
Well, I feel like I just scratched the surface starting to talk to you about the partnership with Lilly and the pump and the pens. So I hope I can circle back maybe next year and check in on the progress and talk to you as you get closer to bringing this to the U.S.
Yes, let's do that. Let's try to give an update. Once we try to file in summer 21 with the authority, and it will definitely be a good timing again to give you an update.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. It was wonderful to talk to you, and I'm so excited to learn more.
It was a pleasure talking to you.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Simms.
So what do you think? I'll be posting in the Facebook group to get your questions for my upcoming interview with Lilly, and that is Diabetes Connections, the group. Do you think it's possible that overall this pump system will turn out to be less expensive, as Simon thinks. I certainly hope so, but any kind of proprietary idea on a market that is already so limited just makes me nervous. I do think, and I'll ask Lilly about this, and I said this when I was at Cambridge a couple of years ago, looking at their prototype for the pump that they're no longer developing, apparently. I think they got into this pump partnership because they know the writing is on the wall for insulin. Price controls may be too strong a word, but limitations. I won't get into it too much here, but we've had this conversation many times before. I think that there's going to be legislation on the state level, if not the federal level, to really change how insulin and other medications, other treatments are priced. So we shall see. And oh my goodness, I hope our conversation about skin tone on the inset came off well. I mean, these things are awkward, as I said in the interview, but once he said skin colored, most of the insets are just bright white. So once he said skin color, I had to ask, I had to follow up. I hope that came off okay. And look, he seemed to take it very seriously. So we shall see. Wouldn't that be nice if medical devices could be a little more discreet on the skin, on any color skin tone? Okay, up next, let's talk about an inverse vaccine for diabetes and explain what that is. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Dexcom. Do you know about Dexcom Clarity? It's their diabetes management software. And for a long time, I really did think this was just something our endo used. You can use it, though, on both desktop or as an app on your phone. And it is an easy way to keep track of the big picture. I try to check it no more than once a week, although I'll be honest with you, there are times when I'm checking it every day. It really does help me and Benny dial back. I look for longer-term trends, and I try not to overreact to what happened for just one day or, 1 hour. The overlay reports help put context to Benny's glucose levels and patterns, and then you share the reports with your care team, which makes appointments a lot more productive. Managing diabetes is not easy, but I feel like we have one of the best CGM systems working for us. Find out more, go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Dexcom logo. In our innovations segment this week, I want to talk a little bit about something called an inverse vaccine. This is a City of Hope phase 1 trial. And City of Hope is an organization that is looking to try to find cures for type 1. I will link up more information in the show notes about them, and we really should talk to them. It's hard for me to believe we haven't had them on the show yet, so that's going on the list. But basically, this would use someone's own immune cells, a beta cell protein, and vitamin D3 to potentially treat type 1. I'm sure that is a very simplified explanation. But these inverse vaccines are trying to stop certain immune responses rather than activate them. When you think about a regular vaccine, right, like the flu shot or the COVID-19 vaccine that we talked about just last week, what they're doing is try to stimulate the immune system, right? Here's a germ, learn how to fight it. Go, immune system, right? The inverse vaccine is, here's something coming in, don't do anything. Stand down. Again, this is a very simplified version of what they're trying to do. But they are recruiting. They can't start the actual trial, they say, until the pandemic is under control much more. But they are recruiting and they are screening patients right now. So I'm going to put up a link in the show notes. And as always, you can go to diabetes-connections.com and look at the episode homepage if you're listening on an app. A lot of them are great to listen to, but the show notes aren't so hot. So if you have any trouble, just head on over to the homepage as usual. The trial, I should say, is open to adults with type 1 between the ages of 18 and 45. You have to have been diagnosed in the last 1 to 4 years. And there's a lot more listing after that. And by the way, this is a follow-up on a small study in the Netherlands where they looked at safety. So, if you get into this, definitely keep us posted. I'd love to know more. Couple of quick housekeeping things before I let you go this time around. I am taking part in a free summit at the end of this month. It is the Fearless Diabetic Summit, and I will be posting more about that in the group and on our website. This is a really interesting summit that is trying to answer the question, what would you tell yourself if you could go back to your first 2 weeks of diagnosis? And they talked to 30 different people in the diabetes space, experts and educators and endos and athletes. And I think I'm the only parent that they talk to, but it's a really interesting concept. And I'll talk more about that as the month goes on, but I'll put a link in the show notes to the Fearless Diabetic Summit. Also, if you haven't seen it yet, I have a free ebook, Diabetes Connections Extra, that I put out late last year. And this is a set of transcriptions, and they are proofed and they're beautifully laid out, easy to read. They are the extra episodes that I did a little while ago, all about the basics of diabetes management. Ketones, what is insulin? What are lows? How do you use a CGM to its best practice? Insulin pumps, all that kind of stuff. I think it's a really good read for newer diagnosed families and for you to give to people in your life that you would like to better explain diabetes to. It is an email sign up, but I don't spam anybody. Most of you are on the email list already. But if you want to send that out, I always put the link in the show notes to that as well. That is the free ebook. And finally, I am this close to announcing my new project. And it really doesn't have anything to do with diabetes. But if you're interested in podcasting, you'll want to sign up. I am going to be teaching a course this year. I'm teaching 2 courses, actually, on podcast monetization, get paid to podcast. I have been really interested in this subject because I've helped a lot of people kind of behind the scenes for the last couple of years to do this ethically, to do this well, to do it in a way that makes sense so that your listeners don't have to pay anything, but that if you want to spend enough time on your podcast to make it quality, you eventually are going to look at options like this. And, like diabetes, there's some snake oil in the space. There's some stuff out there that's pretty questionable. And I want to help people do this with transparency, with disclosures, to do it right. So stay tuned for more on that. I will not be hammering you with this. You are here for diabetes news, but I wanted to let you know, and I'm really excited about it. Thank you so much to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Stacey Simms. I'll see you back here next week. Until then, be kind to yourself.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Simms Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.